Now it's time for Office Hours with Dr. Ken Rucci.
All right, welcome to Office Hours with Dr. Ken Rucci. And on today's episode, we want to talk about cloud app security brokers and dive into a little bit about what they are, how they work, how they can enhance your organization's cybersecurity, and in particular around enforcing generative AI policies. Generative AI has become a very popular topic, and a lot of organizations are at various stages of how are we going to introduce them into the organization? What are the use cases, and how can we protect our organizational data, the files, and educate our users on what they should be doing? CASB, or Cloud App Security Brokers, are a good way to introduce some of these topics in security into your security posture. And so what is a cloud app security broker, or CASB? It's a enforcement point for security, and it sits in between your enterprise and your cloud apps, your SaaS services. So you could be using a SaaS solution for your payroll or document creation or your help desk systems. And it acts as a gatekeeper that can provide a couple of things. One being visibility into what applications are your users using in the organization. We can, through a cloud app security broker, we can identify what applications are being used, how much data is going to that application, what type of data is going, and we can also use CASB for compliance. Compliance is a major factor, especially in government or federal or even in medical organizations, about where the data goes, what type of data are you using. So a cloud app security broker can help enforce your compliance regulations to make sure that the proper data, or PII, personal identifiable information, is being enforced, and make sure that data doesn't go someplace that it's not supposed to. And you can also use a CASB solution for data security. You can make sure that anything that's connecting to a SaaS solution has multi-factor turned on, make sure that the data or the traffic is encrypted. And we can also enforce access controls into those various SaaS solutions as well. And then finally, we can talk about threat protection. So as we monitor the traffic that is going back and forth between these applications, we can look for malware. We can look for anomalies in behavior or traffic, anything that may be identified as out of the ordinary. We can look at that through the lens of cloud app security and generate alerts, generate reports, and let us know what's happening from a cybersecurity standpoint. We want to bring this back to the idea of shadow IT. And in organizations, shadow IT is a particularly hard thing to enforce because end users are using applications that may not be approved. They may be using applications that aren't necessarily sanctioned or secure. So we want to be able to have a way to discover applications that our end users are using, where our data is going, and more importantly, what type of data are they putting in these applications. And I want to dive in today and talk about generative AI solutions, because there are a lot of generative AI solutions out there. And it's not really a matter of when your end users will be using them. They are using them, and they are using them to create emails and analyze documents. The biggest concern for organizations is, what type of data are my users putting into those applications? So being able to have a way to inventory or to search my organization for applications that are being used and are taking data is what we are going to talk about a CASB solution today. And particularly that's called application discovery. So in particular, we want to talk about Microsoft Defender for Cloud Applications. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Applications is a CASB solution that ties into your Microsoft stack. So not only is it integrated from an application standpoint, but it ties into your Entra ID. So it gives you the ability to create policies. It gives you the ability to create data protection policies as well. And you can monitor your SaaS environment. So let's talk about cloud app security discovery and how it works within a solution like Microsoft Defender for Cloud Applications. So one of the most common things is a organization may decide we want to standardize on Microsoft Copilot. We want to give our organization a way to use generative AI. We want to have a way that we can monitor that usage, that we can ensure that our organizational data stays where it's supposed to stay. We want to make sure that our users are not using one of the other 100 of generative AI solutions. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a cloud application discovery. And this is one of the features that's tied into Microsoft Defender for Cloud Applications. Once we have that discovery report where we can see what applications are out there, we can then start to hone in and say, we only want to allow our users to use applications that we sanction. And we can do this very easily with Microsoft Defender for Cloud Applications using the discovery process. So what I want to show you now is a picture of what that cloud application report looks like. And as you can see, it lists out all of the applications that are discovered. It tells you what type of data is going into that application. And it's also giving you information about what type of app is it. And one of the things that Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps does is it provides a rating. So Microsoft looks at all of the applications that are out there, and I think there's probably 70 or so, maybe even more specific things that it evaluates each application on. Does it use encryption? Is it compliant? Does it meet ISO certifications? By having this report and starting to analyze it, it gives you important insights into what behaviors are your users doing? How do they interact with these cloud applications? So once we see what is out there, then we can decide what do we want to allow and what do we want to sanction and how do we want to enforce that. When I say enforce it, we can say if a user is going to that application, we want to have multi-factor authentication turned on. We can actually set these individual policies based on the application, the users, the groups, time of day. There's a lot of things that can go into how we want to restrict access to these applications. All right, so let's take a look at what Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps looks like. We saw a report of what the discovery process actually found. And now what we can do is we can actually go into the Cloud App Catalog and look at the applications that are there. And Microsoft has pre-assessed hundreds of cloud apps, and you can browse them by categories. And in particular, I want to take a look at the generative AI. So if we look at the generative AI categories, we can see pages of all of the pre-assessed apps, and we can even score them, maybe sort them by the risk score that Microsoft has calculated them. And what I can do from here is if I find an application, and we can do this a couple of ways. I can say if I find an application that I want to specifically unsanction, meaning I want to block it, I can just go to the application and click on unsanctioned. And if I click on that as unsanctioned, it'll automatically block that application. I may not want to do that uh, that way because maybe I want to look at these applications and decide how I want to look at it, or maybe we want to have some, a variety of applications. So I can look at the applications by risk score, or if I want to pull up an application itself, like let's take a look at Microsoft Copilot. From here, I can see that this is scored as a 10. And as I mentioned before, there are a lot of different controls and parameters that goes into creating this score. So I can see here what compliance regulations does it meet? Does it use an audit trail? And instead of maybe saying I want to block by an application, what I can do is say I want to block anything that has a risk score maybe of 8 or less, right? So, if we're talking about generative AI, we may only want to have Microsoft Copilot. So I sanction that application. The way that we would set these policies up is I would go into the cloud application and take a look at the policy templates. And I'm just hitting the surface here in this podcast, but I just want to relay how we can use the Cloud App Security Broker policies. And I can set them up saying I want to look at maybe application discovery policies. Let's take a look at that. So I want to create a new application and I want to say, as we go, maybe I don't want to do the discovery on a regular basis for whatever reason. Maybe I want to have a policy that says when a new risky app is discovered, I want something to happen. So I can click on that, and using this template, I can say here, give me a risk. I can base it on the risk score, 5 or above. What do I want to look at? Can I create an alert? Do I want to send an email? I can give it a name, assign a severity to it. So there are endless ways that I can configure my cloud app security environment based on particular applications that we want or do not want to have, based on a score level by category. So there is a lot here. Hopefully you can start to see the power of what a cloud app security broker does and how it fits into your overall security policy. There is a lot of different ways that we can configure it. And what I'm looking at, or what we looked at today, was just around generative AI. All right, so we covered a lot. We talked about the Cloud App Security Broker, or CASB. In particular, we talked about Microsoft Defender for Cloud Applications and how a CASB solution can be used to look at where your users are going from an application standpoint. We can run that discovery report to see not only what applications are being used, how much, what type of data is being used, and then we can create actual applications, and we can use this idea of sanctioned and unsanctioned to say what applications do we want to use. All of this was to help work with the idea of shadow IT. And shadow IT can be a real problem because if we don't have ways to know where our data is going, we run the risk of creating an opportunity for a breach or for malware to get inside of our organization. So thank you for the time that we spent today, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you.